Welcome to the Bigfoot Society. In this episode, I talked to TJ about his encounter in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and the Sevierville, Tennessee area. If you've experienced something similar or have more information regarding Bigfoot or other cryptids in the same areas, please reach out immediately to me after this episode. And if you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, please contact me with more details at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Also, make sure you check out patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society, where you can become a supporting member and get extra episodes every single week, including more stories from TJ. And after you hear this episode, you'll definitely want to be able to hear that. All right, let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to TJ tonight. TJ is a listener of the show, and he reached out to me. I'd like to share some things that has happened to him over the years regarding Bigfoot. But how's it going today, TJ?
Oh, good. How are you?
Awesome. I'm excited to hear your accounts for a reason that I will share later. Kind of keep that in my back pocket for now. But I'm going to go ahead and give the floor to you, and you're welcome to share what has happened to you over these years.
Okay. So my uncle, who was basically my father as well, he acted as both for me. He would take me on probably 3 to 4 camping trips every year. And it was what I looked forward to the most. And one of the places that I really enjoyed going to was up in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. And it's right on the New York Massachusetts state line. Like, you could probably throw a stone and hit New York from where we were. So this place, I was thinking about it, and I'm not going to mention the name of the site because I just don't want to step on any toes, for one. I did a little reading on it, and I know it's closed down right now. It's in the process of being changing ownership. So I don't know who owns it anymore. So I just don't want to piss anybody off by mentioning it on the internet. But this is the type of place that it had a lake in it. I will say that. And it was one of those lakes that, like, you see on a screensaver, crystal clear. It had stones on the bottom. It was just, the most relaxing place you can imagine. But we also went up there to go off-roading, ATVs, all that other stuff, dirt biking. Not at the campsite. We actually went, I'm not sure if I remember the name of the mountain that we went to, but it was probably a 40-minute drive because of all the hills and turns you had to take. I think it was called Bear Mountain. I'm not sure if I have that right, but I think that it was. So this trip, it was not like the others. The previous trips, I was just giddy with excitement, ready to go. Couldn't wait till he picked me up that Friday, and it was always on Memorial Day weekend. It was like, did you ever go somewhere or plan something and from the start, everything was just foobar? Well, this was that trip. He got stuck in traffic on the way to come pick me up. We ended up being 2 hours late. And then we were trying to rush up there because that night storms were supposed to roll in. So on top of that, we got stuck in traffic going up there, and everything was just messed up from the start. So luckily, we got up there with just enough time that you could see off in the distance from where the campsite was, the storms coming, just lightning and everything. And we were trying to set up our tent as fast as possible so that we wouldn't get, rained on while we were trying to do it. So this place, when you pull in, it's a whole bunch of winding turns and campsites that are set up. And then you can go up this one road, and it follows you to the parking field. And the parking field is just this big open space. And then beyond that, it's just all dense woods. So it was pitch black by the time we got there. And we pulled into the parking space in the parking field. And I remember getting out of the car because my uncle had his high beams on. He had a Cadillac Escalade that he was driving. And I remember getting out of the car and looking because I was always a little uneasy about dense woods at night. I don't know why. It's just how I've been since I was a kid. But I remember looking over there, and that's when I noticed the eye shine. And I didn't know a whole lot about nature and eye shine and stuff like that at the time. You know, I saw wildlife during the day, but never really at night. So I pointed, you know, I called over to my uncle and I said, look at that. You know, I said, is that like deer or something like that? And I remember his face just turned concerned right off the bat. And that bothered me because my uncle was the type of person, he was not scared of anything. He was out of his fucking mind. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. There was not much this man was scared of. So when I saw a concerned look on his face, that made me really nervous from the start. And he kind of just brushed it off and he was like, you know, just don't pay attention to that. Just get the tent up. You know, we're about to get rained on. So we did that. And thankfully he had sense enough about him that night that he took a blue tarp and, you know, the little holes that come in the tarp, the little metal rings, he tied it up to the part of the tent where the poles come out from underneath the tent because we couldn't get a great view of where we were that night. And we were worried that wherever we were, there was a chance that rain was going to come under the tent. And thank God he did that, because that night I woke up probably 1 a.m. from the thunder, and there was a river running under the tent. So we survived that night, thankfully. And I just had this feeling that there was just something off. I couldn't shake it. From the time we woke up that morning and we left to go to Bear Mountain to go ATVing, and it wasn't just us. It was his friend had a camper that was just probably a few sites up from us, up on a hill. And it was usually a big group of us that went together, but we were all spread out all over the campsite. So it was just us kind of alone near the parking field. And I think that's probably why I felt the way that I did, because we were so close to what we had seen that night. So we kind of just forgot about it, went off-roading that day, had a blast. And I remember we were parked in the field, we had the trailers unloaded, and it was about probably 2 hours before we were set to leave. We heard people screaming, just bloody murder screaming. Now there's bears up there, so we thought that was it. These people in their ATV came hauling ass out of the trail, and they just, like maniacs, went to their car, which was just a few cars down from where we were parked, and started loading everything up as quick as we could. And my uncle went up to them to try and say, like, is there a bear back there? These people wouldn't even acknowledge him. It was like he didn't exist. He was trying to get their attention to see, like, you know, what's going on? You know, is there something we need to be worried about? They didn't acknowledge him the whole time. They packed up as fast as they could and sped out of there. We should have known after that we should have just fucking left and went home. Because after that, it just gave off, on top of the night before that, it just gave off bad juju that something was not right. So that kind of killed the mood after that, because everybody was really concerned about what was going on. And we figured, you know what, let's just take the loss. We're going to come back tomorrow anyway, pack the stuff up, and we'll go back to the campsite to eat. So we got back to the campsite, and it was just about dusk. And my uncle, wherever we went camping, he brought this huge, old school white igloo cooler with it. And, you know, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. They had the double doors on it. And that's where we had all our food, the fruit, everything. It was all stored in there. And I guess we were so tired that night that we made the mistake of not putting the cooler in the truck, in the Escalade. So that's probably what set this whole thing in motion. So I was exhausted and everybody else was too. So we went to bed. And till this day, I cannot figure out what woke me up that night. But I remember waking up. I'm not 100% sure what time it was, because this was before the age of cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone or anything like that. This was 2005. So it was, you know, just entering that era. But I was 15. I didn't have a cell phone with me. You know, this was, kids didn't have cell phones then. It's not like today. And I remember waking up and I just had this terrible feeling like something was fucking wrong. And I turned to my right, which was where my uncle was sleeping off to the side of me. And I noticed he was already up. And the tent that we had, because you know the mountains in Massachusetts during that time of year, you get that cool breeze blowing at night. You want the top off. It blows right on your face, keeps you nice and comfortable at night. But there was see-through mesh, that it wasn't a big tent. So if you sat up, you could see through to the outside. And I remember seeing his face, and he was ghost white. And he was staring at something. And I nudged him to ask him, what was going on, because I've never seen a look of concern on this man's face like that before. And I automatically knew something was really fucking wrong. And then I turned my head to see what he was looking at. And that's when I saw two of them. And I let out a gasp because I was not prepared for what I had just looked at. And they were fucking massive. So my uncle's Escalade, I remember the one, its waist was up to the window on the driver's side. So this thing was towering over the Escalade. Like it could probably see over the Escalade, no problem, like get a clear view. And the other one was staring at my uncle, and it did not look happy. And I gasped, and it was just involuntary. I had no way to control it. And that's when it turned its attention to me. And the crazy thing was, once it did that, its whole demeanor changed. It went from looking pissed off and angry to gentle. I guess that's the best way I could put it. And that's what was the craziest part about it. It was, I've always had type of a baby face when I was younger, so it must have realized I was just a kid at the time. And I don't know if that's what it was, but that's how I reason it. That it realized he had a kid with him, and it it turned it down. It didn't want to scare me. And I remember when I first looked at it, my stomach turned. Like my nerves were just all bunched up. And it was almost like I was going to throw up because I was just so scared. I was trembling, and it was like I didn't know what was happening. It was like being in a horror movie where you just couldn't. I didn't know anything about this stuff then. I grew up in the suburbs of Long Island. Nobody talks about that stuff there. So it was like my brain was just trying to process what I was looking at. And when I couldn't find an answer, I was starting to freak out. And the other crazy part was, once its demeanor changed, there was this calmness that rushed over me. And I don't know what caused it, because I went from freaking out, almost having a panic attack, to this warm, relaxed feeling. And once that happened, my uncle finally snapped out of the trance he was in. And once he saw me looking at it, he pulled me back and just kind of shoved my face into the sleeping bag. And I remember him saying, "Don't fucking move." And that's when I heard it speak. It was just one word, and I will remember it. It's seared into my brain, and it said, "Enoch." At least that's how I remember it, Enoch. And I don't know if it was talking to the other one or what, but right after that, I heard some commotion, and these things tore us out of our camp. And I don't know why I got up to look again, but I did. These things covered 300 yards in probably 4 seconds. And the crazy thing was, it took our cooler with them, because I guess it must have been the one side of the cooler had a hinge that was broken, the clamp. So it never stayed closed. So I guess it looked in there, saw all the goodies that we had, and it was like, well, I'm not, this is coming with us whether you like it or not. And I remember as it ran into the woods, it sounded like a fucking bulldozer was going through those woods. And what creeped me out even more, as it went into the woods, there were 3 more sets of eye shine that came over as soon as these things entered the woods. I don't know if it was like they were watching out for them or what. So there was 5 altogether. And just the fact that I knew that there was 5 of these things out there, I was freaking out. And I remember after it left, that calmness feeling just left, and I was back into panic mode, and I was begging my uncle to just please leave. And that was the first time I normally he's like, just suck it up. It's going to be okay. Don't be scared. He said, fuck it. We didn't even take the tent. He got us all in the car and drove us up to the trailer that his friend was staying at. And I remember he was in a complete panic. He was knocking on the door. And, that's when they knew something was wrong. Because for my uncle of all people to be knocking on your door at whatever time it was in a panic, something is wrong. So thankfully they were nice enough to let us stay there that night. But we left the next morning very early. My uncle didn't want anything to do with it. And that was the last time we ever went there. He never wanted to go back to that place after. And this was probably one of his favorite spots, aside from Kinnatini, that he enjoyed going to. And he wouldn't talk about it with me the whole ride home. He didn't want to speak of it. It was like he just wanted to forget it. And I remember his Escalade had a sunroof. And he pulled the sunroof back as we were driving down the mountain in the shade. And I was looking at it as the sunroof was opening. And before the glass opened, once the shade pulled back, there was a perfect handprint on the glass. And it was so big, it was pretty much overlapping the sunroof. That's how big this print was. So after that, he refused to talk about it with me. And I had so many questions because I wanted to know what the hell happened that night. Because I still have nightmares about it to this day. I'm not ashamed to admit that. There's still times I go to bed and it's like I'm back in that place, or it's some type of similar scenario, and I'll wake up in a cold sweat because it freaks me the fuck out. And unfortunately, he's passed away now. But even when I knew he was coming to the end, I figured I wanted to give this one more shot to talk about it with him. He wouldn't do it even when he was on his deathbed. He wanted nothing to do with that night ever again. He refused to talk about it. He was the type that didn't like anything he couldn't rationally explain. He was a very devoted Catholic, and if it couldn't be explained by God or some other reasonable scientific explanation, he didn't want anything to do with it. And he would get angry at me because there were times over the years I begged him to just talk about it with me so we could see if we both saw the same thing. Did we really both see this? Did that really happen? And he would get angry and he would just I don't want to talk about it. And that was the end of it. So it kind of bugs me that we never really had a serious conversation about it till this day, and that'll never happen. But, yeah, that night was something. It was bizarre. It really, really was. You go from thinking the world is one way 1 minute to having that all shattered in just a few moments. It messes you up pretty good. It really, really does. And I don't talk about it with most people anyway, because I know how people are about it, and I don't have the patience for it. The way I'm thinking is, if you want to be ignorant and just refuse to believe that these things are out there, I'm not going to sit there and beg you to believe it. I know what I saw. It's scary that these things are out there, and we're being looked at as the crazy ones. There's something really wrong with that. God, it was just so impressive how big they were. That's what really got me, how fucking massive these things were. I'm sorry for the curse words. I grew up in an Italian family, so it's a second language to me. But yeah, that was a hell of a night. That's for sure.
TJ, that's wild. First off, I'm sorry you lost your uncle.
Oh, thank you.
Firstly,
It was. I appreciate that. So just the one last detail that I don't want to forget to tell you.
Definitely.
After we left, about a week later, we got a call from the person that ran the campsite saying that our cooler was found in the parking field and the doors were ripped off the hinges. And they called my uncle and they were yelling at him, "Why did you do that and leave your cooler there?" And he tried. I don't know what exactly he told them, but I don't know if he said a bear got into it or something like that. It was something along those lines because he didn't even want to tell those people what he saw. And I think he was more pissed because I think he knew that the people that run that campsite knew these things are there. Just when I go back and look at it, this is not the first time they've done that. This is not the first time those things have gone into somebody's camp and took something, or the first time they had an interaction with people at that campsite. They were way too calm about it. Even though, like I said, they had that one had the grimacing face, just that fuck around and find out face when he was looking at my uncle. You could tell it was just like posturing, like, just let me do what I'm going to do and I'm going to leave, But the other scary thing was, when you look back and realize it, just those two things alone could have tore ass through that entire campsite and nobody would have been able to do anything about it. They could have done anything they wanted to those campsites, or anybody that was there that night, and nobody would have been able to stop them. Just the size of them and the muscles they had on them. I don't think anybody could have done anything. And by the time somebody called for help, it would have been too late. And I think that's what scared me the most. How powerless I felt in that situation. I had no control over it, and I'm the type of person that doesn't like that. I have to be in control of certain things, or I'm not cool with it. And knowing I was just completely powerless to everything that was happening that night is what really, I think, pushed it over for me. That's what really just fucked everything up for me, camping wise. And I don't enjoy it the same way that I used to. Or if I do go camping, I know it's going to be in a really well populated area where, it's not super dense woods or anything like that, because I can't enjoy it anymore. And it sucks that it's like that, but it's just that every time like I get into a dense area like that, that feeling just replays in my head of how I felt with the pure terror that was flowing through me that night, and I just can't do it. I can't deal with it. But yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that in before I forgot. My ADHD brain skips over details. It's hard.
I totally get that. I'm right there with you. Wow, that is an extremely intense encounter. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like you haven't really shared it to many people at all.
And like I said, it's because I just don't want to deal with the ridicule,
right?
Because it's something I take seriously, because it did affect me in a very physical way, not just emotionally. It affected me in a physical way. So it's to even talk to anybody that's just going to sit there and laugh at you. I'll snap, because I know how I felt that night, and I'm not going to deal with somebody making fun of it. If I know somebody really wants to hear it, I will tell it. But to just some random person, no. That's why I was comfortable to come on here, because I listened to your episodes and I saw how serious you take this.
Absolutely.
I know this is the hobby for you.
No, this is it, man. Dude, yeah. This is it. I'm not even kidding. For the next 30 years, at least, this is it. Like, I take it extremely seriously. So is it okay if I ask you a few questions about things from that night? It sounds like you got a pretty good look at the two creatures. Do you remember any details about how the face looked? I know you've said that you saw emotions, but do you remember anything, any other details?
Yeah. So the one thing was why I was able to make them out so clearly was because our campfire was still going just enough that it was shining light on them. And the creepiest part was the one that was standing on the opposite side of the fire. I could see its hair, which it had like it was almost like a reddish brown, but the fire was causing it to also have eye shine at the same time. So this thing was no more than 10 yards away from me, but it was staring at me with its eyes glowing. And that's probably what set me off to just go into panic mode, because it was just so not normal. The way it was, it was like a staring hole for my soul type of thing.
Right.
And then the other one that was off to the side by my uncle's truck, it was also the same. It had reddish brown hair, and that was the bigger one. I think that one, if looking back, at it in my head, that one probably had 1.5 feet on the other one, maybe a little more. I couldn't tell the eye color on that one because of how dark it was. And it was far enough from the fire that I guess the angle it was at wasn't catching that eye shine. I don't know if the light has to hit the eyes a certain way for that to happen. But I remember you could see this part of the face here, and everything else was just hair. Like it had a super long beard. And then the long hair that kind of went back at its head, it was kind of matted, but it seemed like it was well kept. It looked on some places like sleek, like it was being brushed almost, like they take care of themselves. The hands were massive. And I could tell that even before we found that handprint on the window of the sunroof. I mean, it could probably put its whole hand around my head and squish it, no problems, especially then when I was 15. The arms were insanely long. I remember that. Like abnormally long compared to us. I couldn't tell how far they went down, but because they were kind of like this, their arms weren't down at their sides. They were up in the air. So I don't know, I know a lot of people say they go below the knees. I would have to say they probably definitely did, but I can't say it for sure because like I said, they weren't hanging down. They weren't like just standing there. You could tell they were investigating our campsite. They were trying to figure out what they could take from us. At least that's what I think they were doing. Especially since they just took the whole cooler and ran off. And the other thing that I know that the arms were insanely long because this thing picked up an insanely large igloo cooler, like it was carrying a baby, and ran off with ease. So the muscle, and this thing was packed with ice. I mean, it was only there for a night, and those things held ice for days. So the fact that this thing picked it up with one hand and just kind of hunched it over on its side like it was nothing, and ran off was just it was nuts. When I go back and think about it, just knowing how much weight that probably had. That me and my uncle, 2 people, were having trouble lifting that thing, and this thing picked it up like a baby. That's scary. That's a scary level of strength right there. The one thing I don't remember is the feet.
Okay.
I don't remember looking down there. I was so focused on the face and the body that I just didn't look down there. I would have to say they were male. That I would have to say. I didn't notice any female features on them. They were definitely, broad-chested for sure. You could tell there was a lot of muscle up here. And that was, the hair on it was really thick. So the fact you could see the muscle under the hair was really impressive.
Mm. I know you already kind of talked about how they were in, how looking at the Escalade and how one of them looked next to it. If you had to estimate like how tall each of them were, would you be able to estimate the height of them?
The big one had to be easily over 10 feet. Because I know the top of the Escalade, I think, is about 6 feet, maybe 6'2", if I'm remembering right. And this thing towered over it. It was almost comical how much bigger this thing was. And an Escalade's not a small car. Truck. It's big. So the fact this thing just towered over it, and like I said, its hip was at the glass, the window of the passenger side. So that should give you an idea of how massive this thing was. Because me standing I'm 5'11", so me standing at the passenger side of an Escalade probably goes up to here on, at least. So the fact that that was its waist, I mean, shit, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't give you an accurate number, but just a guesstimate, it had to be over 10 feet.
Were you able to notice, did you notice anything about the mouth? Like, could you see teeth, anything like that?
Yes, I could see teeth from the first one because it was almost like a smile when it was looking at my uncle, but it wasn't a smile. It was like I don't know I have a husky. So if my husky goes after prey, you know how its lip comes up?
Yep.
You know, a dog, and it shows its teeth. That's what it looked like it was doing. So,
yeah.
I couldn't see the color, but I could see teeth. That was plain as day. The lips. I don't know. I don't know the color of the lips were. I really don't. It was, there's a weird combination of being a blur and seared into my mind at the same time.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Seeing the teeth on one of the creatures, were you able to see what the shape of the teeth were at all?
Our teeth.
Okay.
That was the first thing I noticed.
Our teeth, really?
Yes, just much bigger.
Okay. And so that being that, like how they were rounded.
Yeah, no, I mean it's jaw. It looked like they go like that. It didn't look like they flat or anything like that. It looked like they curved to the side almost.
Oh wow! You were able to see the eyes, correct?
Yes.
Did you notice anything about the pupils?
So the one I couldn't see its pupils because, like I said, it was giving off that eye shine glow.
Right.
The other one, they just looked black. Now I don't know if that was because it was dark, but I didn't notice really any white in them. It just looked black, like it was like staring into a hole almost.
The nose of the creatures. Did you notice anything out of the ordinary about the nose, like how it was shaped? More like a gorilla, more like a human?
It looked more like, how we have like a ridge here. Theirs looked more like it went down. Like this didn't stick out as much.
Okay.
It went like that type of thing.
Oh, so it's flattened?
That bridge, yeah.
Yeah.
The bridge with the nose didn't look like it was there.
Oh, wow. What about the forehead above the eyes, that area? How would you describe that?
That was just skin.
Okay.
There was no hair that I could notice, and I did notice that the one when it was snarling at my uncle, you could see the wrinkles in its forehead, and they were so prominent. It looked like it had like almost extra skin there. Okay. Like when it did that, you could clearly see the bumps from it doing that.
Gotcha. You were able to see hair on the creatures, it sounded like. How long would you estimate that the hair was?
I could compare it to my husky.
Okay.
It was like husky length hair almost.
Gotcha. So a few inches?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned that there's almost like kind of a mane of hair, or were you able to see a shape to the head through that?
I did notice that it didn't go like, our heads are like rounded.
Right.
It looked like up more before it went back.
Okay.
Trying to think what to compare that to. I don't know. It just looked like elongated almost. It almost looked like it was elongated at the top. Like there was extra, like their skulls weren't round at the top.
Was this your first introduction to anything with Bigfoot?
Yes.
Okay, because so this is where it's interesting, because any other person that I asked that question, they would have been like this. But the fact that you have to like think of how to describe that, Man, it's very, yeah, wow. So this incident is your first foray into Bigfoot. It's not like you're watching the documentaries and in search of, like, this is not you. Wow.
Like I said, I grew up on the suburbs of Long Island. Hockey was my life.
Yeah.
That was it.
Oh,
I didn't watch
man.
shit on the History Channel like other people do.
Yeah.
I was always outdoors. That's where I lived with my friends. We were on our bikes, causing some type of mischief, or playing video games, or I didn't even know it was a thing. That's really why so
Oh, wow.
the only mythology that I knew before this was, I don't know if you've ever heard of snipes.
Yeah.
It's not real. It's
absolutely.
The adults made up around the campfire to scare kids. And when we would go on these camping trips, like I said, there was always a big group of us. At night, they used to take the kids snipe hunting. And the adults would hide in the forest, and they would jump out and scare us. That's the most I knew about anything.
Wow.
That was it.
This is very, very wild. The way that the creature looked to you, is this something that you would more see in like a zoo type setting, or like you would almost see, like you could be walking in the city and you might see a person that looks kind of similar to how they looked?
There were features about it that are definitely human. But if you saw one of these things walking in the city, you're going to know.
Okay.
It was that different. I guess unevolved is the best way. It's like almost human, but not modern human.
Okay. Yep.
I wouldn't say caveman, but I guess somewhere in between that.
Were there anything you noticed about the creatures that reminded you of different apes or monkeys that you would see in the zoo? I'm going to get flack for that question, but I'm just going to ask it.
No, this thing didn't look like that. I mean, I guess there were some similarities, but no, I would never go to a zoo and think a gorilla looked like Bigfoot or a chimp. No.
Or like an orangutan.
No. I'm not going to sit here and say that they all look the same.
Yeah.
I don't. Who the fuck knows that?
Right.
But no, I wouldn't mistake a gorilla or a chimp for it.
It sounds like you saw them move a bit. Was there anything about the way that they moved that was weird, like the way that they were running or walking? Anything out of the ordinary about their gait?
From what I saw, it was, I hope this is the right word, methodic. Every movement looked like it was for a reason. And the other crazy thing that I noticed was when they ran off, I didn't hear a fucking thing.
Okay.
And you would think something that big until they got to the forest. That's when I heard them crashing through the trees. Before that, when they were running through the field, I didn't hear anything. It was almost like they were running in silent mode.
Yeah.
And that I couldn't explain that. Because, like I said, as big as these things were, if they were running, you would think you would hear it. And it was like almost somehow they were running in a way that they weren't making sound. Which really creeped me out when I thought about it. That the longer time goes on, you start thinking about stuff and you start analyzing things a little differently. And the more I put the details together, the more it creeps me out. Because the fact one of these things can run and not make a noise. I mean, you could be in the middle of the forest. One of these things will sneak up on you and you don't fucking know it's there.
Yeah.
And the fact something that big can do that is crazy.
It is wild. So you having no introduction to Bigfoot before this, did you have anything in your mind then that told you, okay, what am I looking at right now? Or you had no idea what you were looking at?
I didn't know. I had not a clue. To me, it was like a monster. Yeah. That was how my brain was reasoning it at the moment. It was like a real life monster. It was like something out of a Stephen King novel had come to life.
You've already mentioned that you do have nightmares about this continuously. Yeah. And so that was, I'm going to guess, I mean, it's been going on for like 20 years?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay. Is it just a replaying of the events usually when you have those?
Sometimes I am back in that scenario. Other times it's something completely different. But I am in the woods and I know something is coming and I could hear it and I know what it is and I'm panicking the whole dream. And then it's almost like right before I see it, I wake up.
Do they ever talk to you in the dreams or anything like that?
Every once in a while, I'll hear that one word that I mentioned to you.
The word Enoch?
Yeah. Enoch, or something like that. The fact that it talked was just fucking weird because of how deep it was. It wasn't like me and you talking right now.
Right.
It had so much bass in its voice.
Have you ever looked into what that word might mean?
No, I don't. I'm not even sure it's a real word.
It is. I can tell you, it's a real word. It's a religious word. The Book of Enoch has to do with. It's one of the books that weren't put into the canon of the Bible, and has to do with things like the Nephilim, which is like the giants that you may have heard of, and some people think that those are related to Bigfoot, but it's very, very interesting that's the one word that they said. It's going to take me a while to process that for sure. I'm very familiar with that area since my grandparents lived in Great Barrington. So I spent... It is a beautiful area. I was not into Bigfoot at the time because I was a little kid. But I'm very familiar with the Great Barrington area. My father grew up there. Western Massachusetts is extremely wild, and I have no doubt in my mind that there are Bigfoot in Western Massachusetts, especially around that area. I'm pretty sure I'm aware of which that Bear Mountain area. There's a few different places it might be. But it's, man, I was just imagining the woods out there, the phrase is that there be dragons out in Western Massachusetts because it is wild out there. Massachusetts is not just Boston. It is, you get out.
That's not a place you want to be at night with no flashlight. I remember one of the first times I ventured up that far as a kid. That's when I found out what true darkness was.
Absolutely. And, we went hiking in an area. We went camping out in this meadow, and we were just camping in the middle of this meadow. And one night we had a pack of coyotes just like run through the middle of the field, jump over people's sleeping bags. Like, it's a wild place out there. Have you ever done any research to see if there are any other incidents that happened in that same area, Bigfoot related?
I've browsed. The problem is I couldn't figure out how to use some of the maps.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's one I know that I stumbled across that was like Woody or something like that. But I think those sightings were only limited to like the middle, like Texas.
Yeah, they're going to be more Oklahoma and Texas. Yep.
I come across a couple years ago this one map that gave so many sightings. I can't find it again. But it had a lot in the Northeast area. Mm-hmm. And I remember trying to look one night, and it was like really fidgety. So it crashed a lot, and I had kind of given up on it. And then I went to find it again, and it was gone. But it looked like, that one picture floating around that shows the sightings, and it's like the whole United States.
Yep.
It looked like it in the aspect of the markers that they used. The little Bigfoot. That's what it exactly looked like on that map that I pulled up that night, except it was virtual. And you could zoom in places and see the reports.
One you could look up that would be really similar to that, and that's really good, is if you go to bigfootmap.com, it's a Bigfoot mapping project. And it takes data from all different parts of places, and that would give you the info that you'd be looking for sure.
I'm not going to lie, for a while I was too scared to look.
Yeah. No, I bet. I mean,
when you bring these feelings back out in yourself, it's hard to deal with. It really fucking is. I don't, like I said, I'm not the type of person that likes feeling that way. So,
and never feels like you've never been drawn to go back to that place ever. That's a never go back there.
Side of me wants to. The common sense side of me, not so much.
Yeah.
I mean, you just wait until you find out where I live here in a minute. You ever heard of Uwari?
You live in North Carolina? Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
You live in the UR National Forest?
10 minutes above it.
Holy mackerel. Dude. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Did you know about it when you moved there?
Not after we moved here.
Holy mackerel. You moved right into the middle of the fire. Yeah. Like one of the craziest areas for Bigfoot sightings. North Carolina is nuts in that area. Oh my goodness.
You know about the Devil's Tramping Grounds?
No.
You go look that up after we get off this.
Okay.
You're gonna have your mind blown.
Really?
Yeah.
I will definitely let me make a note of that real quick.
But if you ever are out this way, there's I forget the name of the road, but the rest stop is called El Dorado.
Yep.
And it's right in the middle of Uwari National Forest, and the entire store is dedicated to Bigfoot.
Exactly. Yeah. I've talked to at least one person that lives in the middle of that forest, and their house was being attacked by some creature, which they feel is Bigfoot, and it's because they were pretty much doing landscaping on their property. But so you live a few minutes away from there. That's wild. Have you ever gone to the forest, done any hiking in there? Or?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Yeah.
It's going to take some courage to muster up for that one. But I mean, I can't say that the whole area, write it off, because they have off-road trails there. They have really nice cabins for camping, and then there's Baden Lake that you could just go pull your RV right up next to it. And I mean, I would be stupid to not use that just because, of what happened. And, I got 2 kids now that are going to want to experience all that stuff. I'm not going to keep them inside and
right.
not let them go experience nature because something happened to me.
Exactly. Yeah. That's not the only thing that you've had happen to you Bigfoot related.
Yeah. So that was last year, before the birth of my second son. We went out to Tennessee to stay up in the mountains to go see Dolly World. And, that whole area down there is just a tourist trap. So, my wife couldn't do much because she was 2 months away from giving birth. So we found this nice cabin in the woods, the one that I had sent you. And I remember when we got there that night, I had that feeling again. And I chalked it up to, this is just the first time I've been in that remote of an area in a very long time. So it was my nerves playing with me. Now this one isn't as exciting as the previous one, but it's more, it's scary. But I remember my father-in-law went out to smoke his cigar that night, and he came in and he said he saw something staring at him from the woods. And automatically I was like, oh, you got to be fucking kidding me. Please don't tell me that that's happening again. So I just didn't want to know. I didn't want to know. So I went to bed that night with my wife, my kid. I was just, focused on, having a smooth night because it was our first night there. At 2 a.m., so the way this house was set up was, it was like 3 stories. We were the bottom bedroom on the bottom floor of the house, which is pretty much even with the mountain. And there's this deck that comes out. But after the deck, there's probably like a 20-foot drop that goes off. And then there's another level that had a hot tub and a swing that was a Western style horse saddle. And then there was another story on top of that. At 2 a.m., I heard the most terrifying roar ever that it woke me out of a dead sleep. And followed by that, it felt like somebody pulled the side of the house off. Shortly after that, it sounded like something was thrown through the woods. So my father-in-law, he's an ex-Marine, so something is going on. He's going to go investigate it. Something ripped the swing, and these were steel chains that were bolted into the beams of the house. Something ripped the horse saddle off the house and threw it about 80 yards into the woods. And I knew the sound. Once it yelled or whatever the fuck it did, I knew the sound and I knew what it was. And I probably sat there in bed for about 10 minutes just unable to move because I knew what was happening. And then I heard a whole bunch of commotion upstairs, and my stepdad was screaming, and my father-in-law was screaming, and I knew what was going on. And I felt bad because I just went into that panic state. But my wife was trying to figure out what the fuck was happening, and I couldn't even answer her. And my kid was crying because it woke him up, and I'm not kidding. It sounded like because the side of the house was pulled off. And I don't know what set it off. I guess we just pissed it off somehow. But, this was an Airbnb. So we had to let them know what happened because they were going to come back the next day and be like, what did you guys do? So my father-in-law called him to tell him something happened. Something came and ripped the horse thing off. And this guy was way too cool about it. Didn't blame us for it. Didn't say, oh, well, you're going to have to pay for that. He just said, I'm sorry that happened. And that was the end of the conversation. That was it. Thankfully, nothing else happened the rest of the trip. But I don't know why it picked our cabin that night. I don't know what set it off, but something pissed it off so bad that it ripped that thing out like it was a toy. And they found it. I mean, they found the chains, and it like wrapped up all around the saddle, and it was probably about 80 yards. This thing wasn't light. It was not light. Anything that could throw that thing that far, shit. It's terrifying. It really is. Just the raw strength that these things have scares the shit out of me. And I think that's what scares me about them the most. Is that if you ever come up against one that's pissed off like that, what are you going to do? I don't give a shit what you have on you. You ain't going to be quick enough to do whatever you need to do. If it's close enough to you, you're done. That's game over right there. And I think that's what scares me the most. Knowing that something can have you that powerless. And
was that around like the Seaverville, Pigeon Forge area? Yep. Seaverville? Really?
Yep.
I knew it, dude. Yep. Because I've had another report, similar setup, Airbnb, log cabin type deal. I just had a feeling, dude. Wow, that is the crazy thing is that he's pretty much like, oh, happened again.
Yeah, that was basically it. That's the gist that I got from, my father-in-law called him expecting to be yelled at, and he was going to have to argue with him that he didn't do it. And this guy was just like, oh, well, shit.
Dude, I'll tell you what, that area of Tennessee, there's some wild stuff that goes on in that area, and more than Bigfoot too.
They call them the Ridge Walkers.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's pretty much what they're doing. I mean, there's no flat land over there. It's a disaster. I mean, living up there, it's, I don't know how people do it. I mean, it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but I prefer flat land.
As you come out to Iowa, it's pretty flat out here.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild. TJ, man, dude, you have gone through some wild stuff. And like, I'm not going to lie to you, like being in North Carolina, there's a chance, there could be other stuff that happens too. But I mean, it sounds like you got a handle on it. It's not this isn't going to ruin your life,
No. I mean, I've been through quite a bit aside from that. So it's, you can't let things ruin the fun you want to have. Life short as it is, it's more just less pisses me off that, they know what's out there. Just from the reading that I've done over the years, they fucking know these things are out there. And they're not telling anybody.
No, the government?
Whoever it is that's in charge of these decisions.
Right.
But, I mean, I don't buy the whole, well, if we tell them, then people are going to stop going to parks. Like, really? I mean, this is America. You really think people are just going to stop because they know there's something crazy in the woods? They go to Yellowstone knowing that a grizzly bear could walk by and eat their face off.
Absolutely.
If that's not stopping anybody, I doubt something like that is going to prevent anybody from going out and enjoying nature. Although it sometimes does. But that's for the unlucky schmucks like me that have to have a face-to-face encounter with them.
Man, that's wild.
Yeah, and I don't know. I try and rationalize why it happened, but there's no rationale. It was just wrong place, wrong time. That's really what it comes down to, at least I think. I've read a lot of opinions that they choose to reveal themselves to. I don't know if that's true. I am a nature person. I don't hunt or anything like that. Not that I'm against it. If you're hunting for food and stuff like that, then you're doing the right thing.
Right.
But that's not me. I've never been able to do it. I just don't have the heart for it.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. Maybe that is true. Maybe they sense the calm demeanor in people that who is and who isn't safe.
I believe you probably are onto something there. That's something I've been thinking through, and that's a whole different discussion for sure. But I think you might be onto something there. TJ, I want to say thank you for talking about this with me. I've tried for years to. Growing up in Massachusetts, like I get it because one, New Englanders don't talk to you if they don't know you, and especially about weird stuff. I get that because that's where I grew up in Western Massachusetts. So, but I've been trying for years to talk to someone, and you're one of the only people that have reached out. So thank you for being so open to share what you shared in that area.
No problem.
And it's been fun talking to you about. It's been enlightening talking to you. I should say that instead. Thank you for sharing. That whole area of Tennessee is is weird as well. I think there's more to come out of that from other listeners. But we did talk earlier that you're up for, there's a new thing that I'm trying for the Patreon and the YouTube channel members. I'm trying to come up with a name for it. I think maybe Strange Days, but pretty much we have a conversation about weird stuff that you may have experienced that's not Bigfoot related. And I've done it a few times. It's led to some really interesting conversations. So if you want to check that out, you can become a Patreon. The links will be at the description. But I think we're going to have a chat. I got a few questions to ask you about that. But just want to say thank you so much for coming on, TJ.
Oh, no problem, man. Anytime. I appreciate you having me.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. All right, I'm going to use this space this week to announce that I'll be at the Sasquatch Summerfest in Oak Ridge, Oregon as an attender. I won't be presenting or anything, but I'll be hanging out trying to interview people that have had Bigfoot encounters. If you're from the Oak Ridge, Oregon area or surrounding and you've had a Bigfoot experience, please contact me directly, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Also, Priscilla was nice enough that if you get your tickets through SasquatchSummerfest.com and use code BigfootSociety, you can get 50% off the cost of your tickets, which is a big amount. So code Bigfoot Society to get 50% off your tickets, SasquatchSummerfest.com, and helps out the podcast as well. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. One more thing. Okay, here's the deal. So we're at the point, guys, where there's no stopping us. We are going to full-time podcast no matter what, but I need your help to get there. I figured it out, and we need approximately 700 more people in the Patreon in order to reach our goal of going full-time, actually able to go to places, people that have been having Bigfoot activity, interview them face-to-face, check it out for myself, all that good stuff. If you guys can, guys, this is the time. If you can at any time become a supporting member of the Bigfoot Society, go to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. I would appreciate it. It's going to help us get to the next level, pretty much the final level. You guys are amazing for listening. If you can't become a supporting member, please share this episode everywhere you can. Share it with anyone who's into Bigfoot encounters, and that means a world to me as well. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Her and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.